sat down at my art table because I'm, as you can see in the background, working on some images of some very loose, kind of expressionistic dogs for a postcard. But I had this thought, my mind went back to this poem by Lucille Clifton that constantly shows up in my work. And I had thought about it because I completed two of my proposals for this week. Y'all should be so proud of me related to that. It has been so hard for me to actually complete and finish the things that I have on my to do list, like really big projects like proposals. And the fact that I got two out, like I was very happy about that. But with one of those proposals, I forgot to put this poem in there. And this is a proposal for fiscal sponsorship for a program, a project that I'm working on. And, I was giving them some background information about myself. And I usually like to start my proposals with this poem. And so I was like, well, let me just come on because it's been way too long, since I've been on here. And I was like, let me just share what I did this morning. So the poem is called Why Some People Be Mad at Me Sometimes by Lucille Clifton. And in addition to like just looking up the poem, writing it down in my sketchbook, doing some quick little doodles around it, I also just looked up I said to myself, I need to really memorize this poem. And one of the things that helps me to memorize things is for me to like write it down. So I was like, let me write it down in my sketchbook. It needs to be, in every sketchbook, actually, that I'm working in, even if it's, small and in the corner somewhere. That's the energy that I want to in addition to it being like ancestral veneration, like that's the energy that I would love attached to my sketchbook. So I wrote this in here, and I wanted to look it up because I'm like, well, I couldn't remember when did Lucille Clifton write this poem, and so she wrote the poem in 1984. And this is something that I did not realize is the political kind of context to her writing. Why some people be mad at me sometimes. She was commissioned to write this poem in 1984 for the 350th anniversary of the state of Maryland. And in the kind of synopsis that I read about her being commissioned to write this poem for, this type of celebration, it says that, she wasn't in she didn't want to center, colonial practices. And so she wrote about, the tension or the resistance to some of the experiences of colonization, and that connects to memory. And so this poem, Why Some People Be Mad at Me Sometimes, again, Lucille Clifton wrote this in 1984. And it says, they ask me to remember, but they want me to remember their memories, and I keep on remembering mine. And so I just wanted to share that practice with you all. That if you have a piece of poetry that you really enjoy and you're creative, and you have a sketchbook, like maybe it's important to include that in your sketchbook somewhere. Definitely look up like when the person wrote that piece of poetry, like that might be interesting, and maybe the context to why they wrote it. You see this poem by Lucille Clifton being circulated a lot, especially on like social media and everything. But I feel like, as someone that is on social media and that, is in these communities, meaning like, and I would say like literary black feminists, like that's where you see, and organizer, like that's where you see this poem kind of shown or highlighted. I feel like that context of her being commissioned to write for the 350th anniversary of the state of Maryland, and this is what she this is what she wrote for that commission. I think it's so powerful, and just continues to highlight not only like memory work, acknowledgement around like remembering and things like that, but then also just this dynamic of, I would say, like stay violence, where like history is being rewritten, and what that means for certain communities and cultures. And the fact that she wrote this in 1984, you know, and stood on business, she's like, yeah, okay, I will take this commission for, the 350th anniversary of the state of Maryland, and I'm going to stand on business related to my values, so that is my practice and how I incorporate poetry into my creative work. I have another video up that talks about how I've incorporated poetry into my therapeutic work with my clients. So you could check that out. I think that's on my, it's on my shorts. And that video talks about a piece from Romare Bearden, a creative piece by Romare Bearden. It's called My City or The Block or something like that, but it's in the video. And how my client brought in some poetry, and we talked about her poetry experience and my memory about Romare Bearden's piece. Again, I think it's called My City or The Block or something like that. So yeah, let me know what you think about this practice. Do you use poetry at all in your creative practice? What do you think about creative approaches that are about memory and remembering and things like that? Yeah, or even other ways, that you center or think about, reflect on like those pieces about memory and remembering and creative work and tying in poetry and all those things. I have not been on here and on here meaning live streaming on YouTube in like 7 days, 8 days. It's been so much coming up. I have definitely been like drawing and everything. Like I said, these sketches that I have back here are for some postcards that I'm doing. A coworker that I work with, her little puppy had a little dog cast on his leg, and so I want to send a postcard, a Get Better Soon postcard to her and her little puppy to the office, as like, get well mail, and something just nice, to let her. And I also have an emotional support animal. Her name is Winnie. She just turned 3 at the beginning of January. She's a mini schnauzer. So I was like, oh, that might be cute, and hopefully lift my coworker's spirits just related to, your dog, your puppy being just not feeling well, being injured and the emotional impacts of that. So that's me trying to like play around with the shape and also the colors. I will definitely come back on to talk more about that project because I have like multiple versions that I've been exploring with this particular project. So I want to keep documenting like start to finish about how I made this postcard because I want to recreate that. I guess I have missed y'all on YouTube and have so many updates about, like I said, I've been creating. I just haven't had the capacity to come on and like talk through it. But I feel like, I'm getting to a place where I want to get back to doing that because this is definitely coming on here every day and like sharing with y'all what I either made the night before or that morning. It's super helpful. And I'll see y'all soon. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.